Doug Jones is running against Roy Moore in the special election going on next week in Alabama. There is not much discussion going on about Doug Jones or his perspective on important political issues. Jones has even positioned himself as the guy running against Roy Moore, with article after supporting article displaying Doug Jones seemingly spending more time entertaining unconfirmed claims against his opponent than actually talking to his political constituents. The Doug Jones platform is, I'm a Democrat. My opponent is terrible. Vote for me. I'm Doug Jones.
Lee Korfman, Beverly Young Nelson, Debbie Wesson Gibson, Gloria Thacker Deason, Gina Richardson, Wendy Miller, Kelly Harrison Thorpe. And the list is growing. They were girls when Roy Moore immorally pursued them. Now they are women, witnesses to us all of his disturbing conduct. Will we make their abuser a U.S. Senator?
Instead of informing people on what he stands for, he decides to tell people about how bad the other guy is. Not only is this distasteful, in my opinion, but it also brings to question why he doesn't talk about his policies. Could it be that he knows that he will push people away if he does?
Speaking of Doug Jones, a controversial political mailer is rubbing some of the people the wrong way. The ad for Doug Jones appears to have been sent out primarily to African-American households, but many recipients say it's race baiting.
As soon as I got this, I just looked like, what is this?
The flyer from the Doug Jones campaign makes reference to sexual abuse allegations against Roy Moore, but then invokes race on the backside.
Think if a black man went after high school girls, anyone would try to make him a senator.
What got her most is she felt targeted.
I was offended. When I posted it on Facebook, none of my friends that are Caucasian received it. I found out that a lot of people said it was only sent out to African American homes.
If this message doesn't hit people to motivate them, the question is, does it turn them off? Does it look like you're pandering?
For Keith Johnson, that answer is yes.
For his campaign to put this flyer out, it's a complete slap in the face.
He got the ad too.
I mean, I wouldn't vote for anyone that went after high school girls. This is not a black or a white issue. Prior to this, I actually was going to vote for Doug Jones. I actually felt like he was a better candidate with some things that he had done. But after receiving this, I've decided not to vote at all.
A lot has been said about Roy Moore, and I noticed that nobody seems to be talking about Doug Jones, seemingly under the impression that he was the only option following accusations made against Roy Moore. I think it's important for people to know about Doug Jones and what he has done with his career. Multiple links are included in the description. Feel free to check out the Doug Jones puff pieces on CNN and the Huffington Post. Clearly, we know who is on the right side of history. Doug Jones was appointed by President Bill Clinton in 1997 as U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, where he served until 2001. Jones is a pretty mainstream Democrat, supporter of gay marriage, abortion, is anti-free market, condemner of all things problematic, if you can catch my drift. He opposes repealing Obamacare, and he also wants to expand Medicaid. Jones claims that he wants to lower taxes, but was against the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which had passed about a week ago. Jones also claims that a minimum wage increase would help people in poverty, apparently unaware of the effect that it has on inflation. In my experience, minimum wage increases come with the cost of living increasing as well, usually more than what the increase in wage compensates for. Jones described himself back in September as a Second Amendment guy, but said that there are limitations and called for expanded background checks. Sounds more like somebody attempting to sound like a Second Amendment guy. To directly quote Doug Jones, "We've got limitations on all constitutional amendments in one form or another. I want to enforce the laws that we have now. The biggest issue I think that's facing the Second Amendment right now is that we need to make sure we shore up the National Crime Information System, the NCIC system, for background checks, to both keep guns out of the hands of criminals, but at the same time, cut down on error so that law-abiding citizens can get those." Don't you find it amusing how much they think background checks will stop crime? We already have background checks. Look how much it helped in Las Vegas. Roy Moore has become a figure of controversy this past month, the right becoming divided under accusations that seem hollow to some. The accusations are right out of Alinsky's playbook, using the politics of personal destruction to personalize and polarize their target. Using professional social media shills, mainstream media wall-to-wall coverage, and especially late-night show personalities. They have created an us versus them dynamic, as anyone who is skeptical of the accusations against Moore are considered enablers of abuse. Cryin' Jimmy Kimmel even hired a man to disrupt a church sermon that Roy Moore was speaking at in order to publicly shame him for being accused.
In 3 county-wide campaigns, we can stop it and get them out, or we can keep on.
Get out of here. We're here for the judge. We're here for the judge. He's a man's man. The judge is a man's man.
This is not the first time the little crybaby did something that I considered unethical, as he used his newborn son as an emotional political prop to propagandize for Obamacare earlier this year. Cryin' Jimmy, and people like him, are a mockery of the values that they claim to stand for. Kimmel is a mouthpiece for left-wing punditry. He claims to be religious himself, a better religious person than Moore, holier than thou, to paraphrase his own words. Are you kidding me? I am absolutely more pious than you. This is how they hope to censor people, using intimidation and social pressure to prevent skepticism against the accusations. What if these accusations are fake? What will be owed to Roy Moore then? Will he even get an apology from those who have feverishly pushed this narrative? Will he get an apology from Jimmy Kimmel? These people have grown arrogant with the fall of Hollywood, seeing opportunity within the faux pas witch hunts. Mob rule is not how we're supposed to do things in America, and we as a culture used to pride ourselves in giving everyone the assumption of innocence until there has been undeniable proof. The supposed proof that we have been shown has been a yearbook with 2 different colors of ink, not to mention the initials of Roy Moore's secretary for some reason, and a yearbook that the accuser refuses to hand over for people to verify. There is also no police report of any criminal or moral wrongdoing by Roy Moore. On top of that, this woman with the yearbook has been publicly called a liar by her stepson, who is convinced that she is not telling the truth. Visual evidence speaks louder than words, and that is why Al Franken faced a much larger backlash than Roy Moore. The images with Al Franken were damning and powerful, and they speak for themselves. Al Franken can't reasonably deny claims of groping because there are images of him doing it. Roy Moore does not have images circulating around, and there is every reason to give this man the benefit of the doubt until there is ample proof of wrongdoing. As of December 9th, 2017, only days leading up to the election, many of the accusations against Roy Moore have been debunked. Now the woman with the yearbook admits that she added the extra parts of the signature, no doubt after seeing this image, which was circulating around on Twitter. She wrote Moore's last name, the initials of Moore's secretary at the time, Delbert Adams, thinking it was part of his signature, the date, as well as the name of a restaurant. She has admitted to lying about some of it, so I don't think it's too large of a jump to say that more of it could be false. This was a detail that she thought would go unnoticed, but she made the simple mistake of using blue ink instead of black. This isn't to mention that the woman representing her, Gloria Allred, is far from a credible source. If that was not enough to convince you that she may be full of it, her stepson has come out on YouTube directly calling her a liar.
Mr. Moore, I support you. I don't believe the acts that she claims you've done. I don't believe it. I've known the woman. She married my father many, many years ago. I've known her for a while now. And I truly do not believe that she's being honest about this.
Another story that has been going around about Roy Moore is a story about him being banned from a mall because he was predatory towards young girls. Well, it turns out that somebody found the man who was manager of the mall during those years, and he had this to say.
Sure, it's part of that job. Yeah. We did have written reports and things. So, but to my knowledge, he was not banned from the mall.
I am not condoning the behavior that Roy Moore is being accused of, but don't you find it strange that these accusations were all released at once? Of all of his years in office, with a very distinctive career in politics, why did these stories just come out now? Is it possible that somebody is setting these things up, coordinating a character assassination of a judge and a Vietnam veteran in order to gain an extra Senate seat? Is it possible that Democrats would knowingly engage in a tactic this slimy? I'll let you decide that for yourself. Finally, one last thing before we go. Back in 1994, Judge Roy Moore resided over a case involving a man named Richard Hatreon. This man was brought in for contempt over failure to pay alimony and child support. To this day, Richard is still paying those alimony and child support payments. Coincidentally, one of the editors of the Washington Post, David Hatreon, is Richard's brother. Is there a chance that there is something to this, a connection? Perhaps it is all just a coincidence. After all, if any of these accusations are true, they make Roy Moore impossible to defend. Considering how many of these accusations are falling apart, I think my intuition, which told me to give Moore the benefit of the doubt, may have been correct.
News organizations are not courts. They shouldn't take a side when guilt and innocence are in dispute. It's too easy to get it wrong, and they often do. Second, not everyone accused of a sex offense is guilty. Not every accuser is telling the truth. I learned this the hard way a number of years ago when I was accused of felony rape by a woman I'd literally never even seen. I spent the next 2 months trying to stay out of jail. I couldn't tell my children because I knew they'd be ashamed. I couldn't tell my employer because I knew I'd be fired immediately. I spoke only to lawyers and I paid them a fortune. I took a polygraph exam from the former head polygrapher at the FBI. I never stopped worrying that the charges would become public and destroy my life. Everyone accused of a sex offense did something wrong. Everybody knows that, and I knew that no one would believe otherwise.